deeper knowledge, reserve cells are commonly confused with histiocytes, which are connective tissue macrophages. But the reserve cell has a centrally located nucleus arranged in sheath or in a pseudo-syncytial arrangement. They are larger than the small histiocytes. They are similar, or they can be confused with undifferentiated carcinoma. You can differentiate them by the lack of nuclear abnormality in reserve cells. So we are going to look at other types of cells seen in normal instances, a vaginal smear. The next one we'll be talking about are the endocervical cells. It's very important you are able to identify these cells. Endocervical cells are columnar glandular cells arranged in sheets or honeycomb or palisading manner. They are tall. Well, that's not surprising because they are columnar in nature, so they will be tall. And they have peripheral nuclei. Peripheral nuclei. They are often rich in glycogen, so they are glycogen laden. And glycogen provide the nutrients for energy, to provide energy for the activity of the cells. So I'm going to show you a series of slides on endocervical cells. So you should be able to get used to the pattern, the palisading pattern, tubular tall palisading arrangement. Note the peripheral position or location of the nucleus here, and how the cells are standing side by side arrangement in a tubular manner, like tube being arranged side by side. That's what is called a palisading arrangement. With that, that's how you identify endocervical cells. When you see that arrangement, you know they are endocervical cells. So more slides. This is another palisading arrangement mixed with honeycomb arrangement. When you see that, you know that it is endocervical cell. Honeycomb appearance, palisading appearance. I'll show you more on honeycomb so that you understand what I meant by honeycomb. When your honey, the honey bees. Aha. So this is what you see, honeycomb. You see how the cells are tightly arranged in sheets with thick intercytoplasmic thickened edges. That's molding. This is how endocervical cells are arranged. And this kind of arrangement is called honeycomb pattern. You use it to identify endocervical cells. Okay. During pregnancy, there is a type of endocervical cells you should know. They are called hypersecretory endocervical cells or ariostellar reaction. The cells are large, vacuolated, with extensive cytoplasm, which is often mistaken for a pleomorphic condition. An untrained mind may confuse them with malignant cells, but no, they are not malignant cells. You should go to find out when you see something like this, they are hypersecretory endocervical cells. And the history should rightly point to pregnancy. Okay, so we move to the next cell type, endometrial cells. They appear in clusters. They actually cell balls that you find in different round, oval, tight, clustered arrangement, rosettes. Um, it has an inner layer called inner endometrial stroma layer, endometrial stroma cells, and the endometrial intermediate cells. So when you look at them, this is common in women of reproductive age, especially women that are in the secretory peak of the proliferative phase, the peak of the proliferative phase, trying to enter the secretory phase. You see a cellular picture like this. So the endometrial cells are always found floating amidst intermediate cells. So you can see this slide pointing an arrow to the endometrial cells. More illustrations on endometrial cells. You always find intermediate cells around there. You always find intermediate cells around there. Endometrial cells. You can see they are in tight clusters. Sometimes they are crowded and in sheets. But by the size of the nucleus, you will be able to identify them as endometrial cells. Endometrial stroma cells. These are endometrial cells that are small as the size of intermediate cells nucleus, and they vary in shape, but not in size. And their nuclear chromatin is glassy. Because it is glassy, that's why it's called salt and pepper, granular and glassy, salt and pepper chromatin. Some of them can be deeply stained, as shown in this slide. So this slide is to make a bolder illustration of endometrial stroma cells. They are a crowded group of cells. I see them streaming amidst one another, but the nucleus is granular and glassy. So that's salt and pepper chromatin. It's a very important feature for identifying endometrial stroma cell. They are seen at the follicular phase of the monthly oestrus cycle, particularly day 1 to 5. We'll talk more on that later when we start looking at the phases, the menstrual phases and their cytological features. But now let's continue to review normal cell seen and the vaginal smear. Exodus. Not the one in the Bible. Exodus. These are clusters of endometrial cells. Clusters of endometrial cells. They are seen between days 6 to 9 of the female oestrus cycle. They consist of inner layers of endometrial stroma cells and outer endometrial epithelial cells. You can see the outer contours, irregular contours of the cells at the peripheral side of these huge clusters of cells. This is exodus. You call it out as exodus. when it is seen in vaginal smear. They are not abnormal, they are normal cells. So more illustration on exodus. I want you to see more. You can see them. Exodus is always in between day 6 to 9 of the female menstrual cycle. See them floating, walls, inner endometrial stroma cells. They are very clear on this slide, and the outer cells that have contours. Exodus. Endometrial cells seen between day 6 to 9 of the female menstrual cycle. Okay, other cell types that can be seen in normal conditions. Spermatozoa. When your patient doesn't listen to instruction, you will find something like this. If you have prepared the patient well, but they still come after having sexual intercourse, you see spermatozoa. And that will make the investigation to be null and void. So you have to fix another appointment. You fix another appointment, especially for hormonal assessment. Other cell types, okay, commensal bacteria, lactobacilli will be seen. And when you see their effect, how they lyse the cell cytoplasm and keep the nuclei floating everywhere as naked nuclei. No, you call it out as Doddeland bacilli. They are commensal seen in vaginal smears. This slide shows the effect of the lysis, a lysed background. So those are the cell types for now, basic cells you should know that are seen, and they are normal. They are seen in normal conditions. The superficial cells, the intermediate cells, the endocervical cells, the ariostellar reaction cells, this hypersecretory endocervical cells, reserve cells, parabasal cells, the exodus, which are endometrial cells, then endometrial cells themselves, spermatozoa, if your patient doesn't listen to the instruction, and now the common like Doddeland bacilli, they are normal conditions. So what are the factors responsible for physiological changes? We have been talking about changes. We have looked at the biological background from the pituitary to the hypothalamus to the secretion of the gonadotropin releasing hormone, how it stimulates the follicles of the ovary to start secreting estrogen through the follicle stimulating hormone, and the luteinizing hormone stimulates the cell to secrete progesterone. Now, why does it happen that way? So factors responsible, we are going to consider them. Factors like age, predominating hormone, which hormone has the upper hand between estrogen, progesterone, or sometimes androgen. What's the microbial status of the vagina? Is it pregnancy? Is it menopause? Is it IUD, intrauterine device? Is it drugs? Or is it pituitary, ovarian, or effect of the adrenal, pituitary, ovarian, hypothalamus, adrenal axis, physiological reasons? We look at them one after the other. So you begin to appreciate the dynamics and how it determines so much in hormonal assessment of the female reproductive system. At birth, there is a small amount of estrogen, probably from the mother. The newborn baby is not grown yet. It's just coming out of embryological development to full term, so it will be birth. After birth, you expect to find some elements of mother materials in the baby. So that's why you may find some progesterone, I mean estrogen effect or superficial cells in the smear when taken. There's no progesterone because estrogen is not that it's secreted, it's just transferred from the mother. No progesterone effect, and the ovary at birth is inactive, although fully formed embryologically. You should be able to talk about all these conditions one after the other, because they are the main what counts in this lecture. At childhood, as the child grows, there's no estrogen production, no progesterone production, and the cells are to be seen are just the immature primitive cells, the parabasal cells. They will be there at the lower layer of the epithelium, but they won't change. They will just be there because what will change them hasn't come. It will take estrogen to start that process. So the cytological features is more of parabasal cells at childhood. At puberty, the dynamics which start changing. Follicle stimulating hormone from the anterior pituitary being stimulated by the hypothalamus gonadotropin releasing hormone will stimulate ovarian follicles to produce estrogen. And estrogen will stimulate proliferation and maturation of the follicular cells. I mean the epithelial cells. At this stage, what follicle stimulating hormone does is through estrogen, it will initiate a process of maturation, division and maturation. So the parabasal cell will start proliferating and growing at the same time to maturity. So it will be pushing, differentiating itself into intermediate cells. Intermediate cell will grow and stimulated to differentiate into superficial. These are just hormonal changes. Some people, they confuse that with cancer processes, processes of cancer. It has nothing to do with what I'm talking now. That one is another process entirely. So estrogen will stimulate proliferative phase. Still at puberty, another hormone from the anterior pituitary, the luteinizing hormone, will cause maturation of ovarian follicles until they are released at ovulation. It's always progesterone, estrogen, progesterone interplay. So estrogen will first have the upper hand, and later progesterone will rise and pick up and rise to its peak post ovulation, where it has its own maximum effect. So when progesterone is produced, it maintains pregnancy post ovulation and makes sure that the fetus lives in good condition until it is brought to full maturity. So progesterone has stimulatory secretory effects on the endometrium. I'm going to use the next slide to explain this better using the histological condition of the endometrium. So the proliferative phase, this is the estrogen phase. It begins at the end of the menstrual flow. The menstrual flow is actually from day 1 to 5 to 6. Then the epithelium from basal portion, they begin to proliferate, increase in number. That's why you are seeing increase in number of this on this slide. Packed glandular cells, progressively they will be increasing length, although with uniform diameters. And we continue to grow because that's what estrogen is meant to do. Stimulate growth, stimulate maturity. And progesterone will picks up a hacksaw pattern of the glandular. It's always a tea party moment, season for commensals and other organisms who find food ready to feast on. So the glands are hyperactive. The glands assume corkscrew or tortoise shape. They secrete large amount of material. Lumina become larger and larger and irregular in shape. That's what this slide is illustrating to help you appreciate what happens at the proliferative phase and what happens at the secretory phase. The changes in the glandular features and the glandular pattern, from increase in size to enlargement and elongation. So with that background, we'll continue with, so you can understand better why the cytological features we are seeing are what they really are, why we are having the types of cells that we have spoken about and the ones we'll be talking about. So let's see some estrogen effects, because estrogen stimulates maturity. That's why you are seeing this on this slide. You have the superintermediate cells, that's of full maturity. So the cells, the eosinophilic cells are superficial cells, polygonal, as earlier described. And you can see the dark, small pycnotic nuclei. You should be able to see the intermediate cells too, polygonal with larger nuclei. No, it's a sign of estrogen effect. Estrogen stimulates the increase in vaginal epithelium and their maturation. So cytological features include intermediate cells, superficial cells, and endometrial cells. They are indicators of estrogen effect when you see them on smears. At full maturity, this is what you see. You can see the superficial cells. They're actually enjoying themselves there. They predominate. You have this predominating prevalence of superficial cells. At any point you can't see the slides I'm projecting, please let me have the feedback. I need you to see all those slides as I'm talking about them one after the other. Okay, progesterone effect now. Progesterone promotes desquamation of upper layer of epithelium. It likes to stimulate the enlargement, the maintenance of the intermediate cells. Glycogen availability, and of course you have microbes, especially the lactobacilli, doing their thing, feeding fat on their season where there's glycogen. So we have more intermediate cells and parabasal cells due to progesterone effects. Epithelium is large, glands are secreted, and the glycogen is deposited. Of course, because glycogen is there, That's a feasting time for Doddeline bacilli to show off. So when you see that picture, features of vaginal smear, you know that that's progesterone effect. Progesterone effect. Should be able to write short notes on that. Now, there's a third hormone that I need to talk about. It is androgen. Androgen. This happens at a time in the cycle, female reproductive cycle. When there's excess androgen, it causes thinning of the vaginal epithelium, whereby proliferation will cease, differentiation too will cease. So it's going to neutralize the effect of estrogen and progesterone. Any smear showing superficial cells at old age indicates estrogen secretion. Estrogen, superficial cells is not supposed to be seen at old age because a woman is no longer at reproductive age. The menstrual cycle ought to have stopped. So you do not expect to see. Superficial cells are indicators of estrogen activity or estrogen secretion. So when you see it at old age, then you will begin to think of certain dynamics. That estrogen cannot be from the pituitary. It could be from somewhere else, maybe compensatorily from the adrenal glands, or perhaps the patient have been taking estrogen therapy, maybe because of cancerous conditions. So that's when you find androgen coming to this stage to compensate. And when it comes to stage, you find atrophic immature cells, parabasal cells. Yeah, androgen insensitivity syndrome. This a condition that brings is a congenital condition, and it disrupts everything. The grave hormonal imbalance and confusing presentation by the patient. So phenotypically, the patient is female, but chromosomes points to female, points to male, XY. Female phenotypically, but by chromosomal presentation is male with complete number of chromosomes. That's confusing. That's telling you that that individual, although looks like female, may have breasts, but she will never have the full female reproductive organs. So that's what this slide is showing. It's confusing. It's having ambiguous genitalia. You can't say this is male organ and you can't say this is female organ. It is called androgen insensitivity syndrome. Androgen is not having effect, though congenitally is supposed to be male, but all the effect is null and void. The full expression is female, and that's confusing. It can cause a lot of psychological trauma and crave for suicide. No, and if presented clinically, the undesired organ, maybe testicular organ, had to be removed surgically. Has to be removed surgically, and you can begin to treat the patient to fully have features of female, maybe by estrogen treatment. What I want you to see on this slide is that you can see the few cytological cells pointed to by the red arrow. it's a zero scenario. No estrogen effect. You can't see progesterone effect. Numbers of cells are extremely few, and the ones that you can see, they are immature, ramped over parabasal cells. And that's why, although a female, that individual cannot have menses and cannot give birth. It's a confusing state. Androgen insensitivity syndrome. So I need you to be able to talk about the cytology, cool features of androgen insensitivity syndrome. It speaks loudly about physiological changes you see in some women. And I need to say this, the confusing gonad had to be removed. Because if left there, that is an invitation to trouble. It may develop into a cancer in the future, malignant state in the future. So that's why it has to be removed. It has to be removed. So androgen insensitivity syndrome, no uterus, no ovaries, no fully formed and undescended testes. So that one has to be removed. It's dangerous. You have to remove it. Although chromosomally, that's what's supposed to be there. But what you are having in your hand or before you is a female, fully grown female. So this makes endocrinology and hormonal cytology very interesting. Okay. Now, microbial status and how it comes in physiological changes in female. Organisms like Lactobacillus acidophilus thrives at alkaline pH. And when it is present, cytological features demonstrate admixture of intermediate cells, not even admixture, I would say intermediate cells with glycogen for feasting. If you are going to find them superficial cells, they'll be very, very, very few. We'll talk more on factors responsible for the physiological changes in female. This time, Coccobacillus. These round, small cells likes feasting on the cell cytoplasm of intermediate cells. Microbes like intermediate cells, and that's natural and understandable because intermediate cells come to the table with food, glycogen. So the bacteria like feast. So Coccobacilli takes it to the extreme. It parasitizes, it invades the nucleus, colonizes it, and occupies everywhere. If that condition is not treated, it's going to eat up all those cells. And that could cause something, another clinical condition. Infertility may result, or even worse scenarios. One effect that is remarkable of Coccobacillus effect is cytolysis, to eat up the cell, to eat them all. Okay? We'll talk about pregnancy now. When a woman is pregnant, what should we expect to see? A vaginal smear. During pregnancy, couples lutein produces progesterone up till the first 3 months. That's first trimester. And also produces progesterone. So you have intermediate cell pattern in cytology smears. At the early stage of pregnancy, you may find some superficial cells, which is still remnant effect of estrogen at ovulation. Estrogen effect peaks at ovulation. So when the woman is at the first trimester and you are seeing some, maybe very few superficial cells, that is remnant of the estrogen. But at pregnancy, progesterone effect is what is seen. And it goes with intermediate cell cytological features. Early menopause. What should we expect? The level of estrogen begins to recede gradually at early menopause. And you can find dispersed intermediate cells. Well, some instances you may find some parabasal cells. And it's telling you something that the endocrine is gradually going into a state of perpetual inactivity. Numbers of superficial cells reduces. At mid-menopause, what do you find? There is moderate reduction of estrogen. Crowded parabasal cells are seen, and you have clusters of intermediate and parabasal cells. At late menopause, what do you find? You expect that estrogen production and progesterone production has ceased. So no more proliferation of the epithelium, no more maturation. So what you have will be the immature primitive cells, the parabasal cells. So the pattern is called atrophic pattern. So it is atrophy you see at that stage, late menopause. And thereafter, it's always atrophy, atrophy, atrophy. Okay, effect of IUD. If the woman is on a IUD device, it causes changes, causes some changes to the appearance of the cells. The epithelial cells of women on family planning changes in morphology. The cell becomes crowded. They come together, they cluster together, they become vacuolated. They push the nucleus to the periphery. And you see structures like balls or balloon or what we call bubble gum. Bubble gum. And when you are chewing gum and you bubble it, bubble gum. So such features seen is IUD effect, intrauterine device. Drug effect. Drug changes the cellular features seen in the female. So, for example, drugs like diacetylcholesterol alters the epithelium and makes it susceptible to benign proliferative reactions. This is a very dangerous state. Benign proliferative reactions have been identified as the driver of malignancy. So when that is done, historically, this drug, diacetylcholesterol, was known to be transgenerational. Its effect is transgenerational. The offspring of women who took that drug came up with cancer. Their mothers didn't have cancer. They only had a benign state, but the children, the offsprings, later in life, developed cancer. So it changed the physiological, the cytological morphology of the offsprings at puberty. To the mothers, it causes what is called a vaginal adenosis. That's deposit of island of glandular epithelial cells. That's what I'm showing on this slide. Islands of glandular cells. That's what you are seeing. Glandular cells. They are benign. They are benign. DEB disturbs the natural process of epithelial growth because it hampers the natural effect of estrogen and progesterone. It causes a lot of hormonal imbalance. But this is what you see cytologically. Should be able to write a short note on that. Effect of drugs on morphology of the female menstrual cycle. Okay, we move to effect of the pituitary ovary adrenal axis. When something goes wrong between the communication between the pituitary hypothalamus and the gonads, you can have structural defects as shown on this slide. Structural defects. Example, pituitary insufficiency disrupts the products of hormones, production of hormones, and that may lead to structural defects. If left untreated, structural defects can lead to malignant conditions. What you are seeing on this slide are structural defects, really. So it's an indication of disruption in the functioning of the pituitary hypothalamus gonads adrenal axis. At any point you can't see my slides, let me know. Okay, so we want to drive home all this we have been talking about to reemphasize what you see cytologically, because we are talking about hormonal assessment. You need those background knowledge to be able to detect and make diagnosis that will be helpful to the patients. Cytological features of female menstrual cycle. So we'll go at it now. Well, the menstrual phase is characterized by bloody smear, debris, polymorphs, dirty background. That's what you always find. Very dirty. The proliferative phase, which I always call the estrogen phase. This is the evidence of estrogen activity. What you find is predominantly superficial cells. Superficial cells. When you find them predominantly on cells, fully mature, you know that it is an indicator of estrogen activity. Ovulation. At ovulation is the same thing. Peak of estrogen activity. So the cells have been exposed to repeated estrogen stimulation, and on day 14 is going to release egg. So that's a peak of estrogen activity. What you find are fully mature superficial cells. You can see how everything is making sense. Physiologically, we have looked at the physiology, and now we are looking at it cytologically. There's a synergy. The secretory phase is the progesterone phase. So the cellular picture is that of intermediate cells and endometrial cells, because normally endometrial cells are shared in reproductive women that are going the cyclical menstrual cycle, especially getting to the stage of ovulation. They are glandular cells, don't forget that. Pregnancy. What you see is navicular cells. Navicular cells, they are intermediate cells, rich in glycogen. I told you earlier they are both shaped. They are both shaped, and their cytoplasm edges are thick, and it's called molding, thick, like both. Okay, pregnancy too, you see ariostellar reaction, hypersecretory endocervical cells during pregnancy. There are features that are seen. Cockle balls. These are degenerate crystalline bodies. They are refractile, they are star-like, and club-shaped spokes. Cockle balls. They are seen in pregnancy. Okay, still on cytological features of female menstrual cycle. Postpartum. A postpartum smear will show parabasal cells that are laden with glycogen. It is called androgenic atrophy. Androgenic atrophy. That is the cytological features or cytological pattern of postpartum smear. Glycogen-laden parabasal cells. It is called androgenic atrophy. At lactation, features is parabasal due to prolactin effect. Prolactin takes over the stage. You should be surprised why prolactin comes in now. That's to arrest the further activity of the endometrium until the baby is fully weaned. That's why, because the mother is breastfeeding, that's why breastfeeding is always encouraged in women. So prolactin secretion from the pituitary will cease estrogen activity. So at that point, there is not going to be stimulation of immature cells to proliferate or mature. They stay there as immature. So what you find is parabasal cell pattern. At early menopause, moderate superficial cells and few intermediate cells. That's what is shown on this slide. Moderate number of superficial cells is a pattern in early menopause. The activity of estrogen is winding down. The activity of progesterone is winding down. At mid-menopause, you may find few intermediate cells or scanty superficial cells, as shown in this slide. Okay, and at late menopause and post-menopause, the pattern is fully atrophic. So you find parabasal cell predominating, like the sea fish, streaming like the sea fish. Estrogen level is 0. Progesterone level is 0, should be 0. So they have no effect at that point in time in normal condition. So if you are seeing something beside that, then we have to start querying some other reasons, perhaps drug effect, or perhaps tumors that secrete estrogen or tumors that secrete progesterone. Okay, let us go into hormonal assessment. We have appreciated all the backgrounds and the cytological features of cells we should see in normal menstrual phase, menstrual cycle. So how can we use those knowledge to assess hormonal status? We will need to first talk about indication. Why investigate for hormones status? Okay, it could be amenorrhea, dysmenorrhea, primary infertility. Could be if it's primary infertility. Primary infertility could be caused by the following: gonadal dysgenesis, ovarian coidism, pituitary hypogonadism, congenital uterine defect, feminizing testicular syndrome, congenital adrenal hyperplasia. All these could be the cause of primary amenorrhea. Sometimes, okay. Well, I need to tell you, let's see some cytological features in this primary amenorrhea phases. This table is showing clinical condition and the cytological features. If it is gonadal dysgenesis, you see marked atrophy. You know what atrophy means now. You'll be seeing parabasal cells. Ovarian eunuchoidism is marked atrophy. Pituitary hypogonadism is atrophy to moderate proliferative cells where you find some superficial cells. If it is congenital uterine defect, it's atrophy, and you can see some superficial cells or effect of estrogen. If it's feminizing testicular syndrome, it could be, you find slight to moderate proliferative cells, or effect of estrogen, you find superficial cells. And if it is congenital adrenal hyperplasia, you have atrophy to slight proliferative estrogen effect. That means you'll be seeing some superficial cells. Okay, the indication could be a secondary amenorrhea, and secondary amenorrhea can be caused by chronic ovarian failure or metroplasia hemorrhagica, granulosa cell tumor, or tecomas. It's a condition that can lead to secondary amenorrhea or galactorrhea. Chiari-Frommel syndrome, hirsutism, especially genetic hirsutism, masculinizing ovarian tumor, Stein-Leventhal syndrome, Cushing syndrome, adrenogenital syndrome, or follicular cytosis. All this could be the reason for secondary amenorrhea. They have to be investigated. Okay, and what do you have cytologically when this situation arises? So these are the clinical conditions versus cytological features. For chronic ovarian failure, it's atrophy, and you know what that means already. Parabasal cell will predominate. If it is metropathia hemorrhagica, or granulosa cell tumor, or tecomas, or follicular cytosis, what you have is high conification, more of superficial cells, or high KPI, karyopyknotic index. We'll talk about that later. If it's galactorrhea, you'll be having postpartum cytology features. And what is postpartum cytology features? You know that it is androgenic atrophy, where you have a parabasal cell leading with glycogen. Chiari-Frommel syndrome is marked atrophy. When it is hirsutism, especially genetic hirsutism, it is normal cycling. The individual will still be having the normal menstrual cycle. If it is feminizing ovarian tumor, the masculinizing ovarian tumor, you have varied cytology features. Not here nor there, it's a mixture of cells that you see, which is variable. If it is Stein-Leventhal syndrome, you have various cytology features of variable maturation index. So these are good points for questions. If it is Cushing syndrome or androgenic atrophy, what you have is can you still see my slide?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Okay. So let's continue. Okay.
Can't hear anything again, sir.
Yeah, I'll bring it up now. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let's see the technique for staining, short staining. The component of short stain include 50% ethyl alcohol, Berbic scarlet, orangey, fast green SF, dodeca phosphoric acid, the phosphoric acid, and glacial acetic acid. Short stain is the best stain to use for hormonal assessment. Orangey, this is the principle enhanced by toxic acid, stains mature superficial cells, because what this stain is useful for is that it's going to enhance the conification ability of the mature cells. So orangey gets that done effectively, while fast green stain intermediate and parabasal cells, I mean the non-conified cells. Acetic acid is there to intensify nuclear stain. So the protocol is to fix this smear wet, and then with equal portion of ether and alcohol, then stain in short stain. Don't forget that short stain is a rapid staining technique. Apply short stain for 2 minutes, then rinse in 70% alcohol, and of course you follow it up with the other processes. You find it in the slide, you have it. Okay. At the end of the day, the short stain magnifies the eosinophilic staining capability of estrogen effect and the cyanophilic capability of progesterone. And that is why, okay, let me show you this first. This slide is showing the conification effect of short stain and non-conification effect. Conified cells are distinctly demonstrated and distinguished from non-conified cells. Conified cells indicate estrogen activity, and non-conified cells indicates high progesterone activity. So this is an example of non-conified cells. You can see the smear populated by non-conified cells, means a progesterone effect is high here. So it's because of that, when you are assessing for hormone, you have to use certain indices. So maturation index is one of them. We'll look at maturation index, conification index, and karyopyknotic index. So the maturation index is the ratio of parabasal cells to intermediate cells to superficial cells. It is used to determine the rate of maturation as per activity of the hormones influenced by estrogen on the epithelium. So, for example, during the proliferative phase, you should have a maturation index that looks as indicated on this slide, 00100. 00100 is a magnifying estrogen effect. Estrogen effect. So it means estrogen activity is very high. For the secretory phase, you should have a maturation index of 0,100. Intermediate cells prevails. And when intermediate cell prevails, you know that progesterone activity is high. For early menopause, your maturation index should look like this, 0,7030. You know, the active cells, I mean the intermediate and superficial cells, will be gradually being silenced, you know, going off gradually. So 70-30 is telling you that there's reduced progesterone and estrogen effect gradually. At mid-menopause, you'll be having a higher population of parabasal cells gradually. So you have something 30-0, 30 for intermediate, and because it will have to shift to the left ultimately. For late menopause, it has fully shifted to the left. Maturation index is 100-0-0, which indicates zero production of estrogen and progesterone. That stage, you have fully reached your atrophic pattern. Conification index. This is the measure of estrogen activity. It's the number of eosinophilic cells per 100 squamous cells. Some say per 200, but per 100. Conification index is otherwise called eosinophilic index.
Please, sir,
It
the
means
slide
high
is no longer changing. The slide is no longer changing.
From what I said, when did you stop? Did you stop seeing the slide? So I'm going to repeat the late menopause phase of maturation index. I hope that's fair for all. Can you see this now?
No.
Maturation index. Maturation index.
Index. Mid.
Okay, it has changed. Yes, sir.
So at mid-menopause, what you find is that the maturation index will be shifting to the left remarkably. So that's why you're having 70-30. It's moving to parabasal cell, more of parabasal cell and less of intermediate cells. By late menopause, you will be seeing a full shift to the left, where you have 100-0-0, which means all the cells will be parabasal. All must be parabasal. That's late menopause, which indicates zero production of estrogen and zero production of progesterone. It is an atrophic pattern. That's what you see at menopause. I hope that is clear. Okay, conification index. This is the measure of estrogen activity. It is the number of eosinophilic cells per 100 squamous cells. And I said some say per 200, but for our use, per 100 squamous cells. Conification index is otherwise called eosinophilic index. Here, high conification index indicates high estrogen activity, and it gives clue about the cytological features. Low conification indicates reduced estrogen level. So if you are having a conification index of 10%, 20%, you know that the estrogen level is low. And that's reasonable to an endocrinologist, reasonable to the clinician, to the gynecologist, when they match that with the history of their patient. So they will be able to take the right choice of a treatment for management. A high conification index means high activity of estrogen. The karyopyknotic index. That's the third indices. This could be defined as the number of superficial cells showing pyknotic nuclei per 100 squamous cells. A pyknotic nuclei is that whose diameter is less than 6 microns. So all those red superficial cells, they are the ones that will be measured. Their nuclei will be measured, to see how small, how condensed they are, to show or indicate full maturity, and that truly these are superficial cells, which indicates high estrogen activity. So let's look at automation in cytology now. Automation in the cytology laboratory could be defined as using automatic machines to automate the pre-analytic, analytic, and post-analytic processes of cytological specimen. This includes the processes of sample collection, fixation, image analysis, scanning images, identification, etc., etc. Because there is an increased demand on the cytology laboratory to deliver prompt services at reduced costs without compromising standard. The quality of cytology smears or laboratory testing is expected to improve the administration of treatment onto patients. So with this, the laboratory has no other option than to live up to these expectations. And this, among other considerations, will justify need for a shift from manual processes to automatic or automated processes. Despite the unquestioned success of the perpendicular smear or method in diminishing cervical cancer deaths in screened populations, the limitations of manual screening exist, such as false negative results, is highly pronounced, false positive results. So those are the limitations that have been observed over time. Then laboratory process errors. All this justify a shift to manual processes that will bring improvement, that will make it possible to run more tests at reduced cost, lean processes at reduced cost, and yet optimizing result and quality of the result. So automation comes in to resolve or make this possible. The manual process has these following defects. Error-prone processes, low operational I need to make some changes here. So automation corrects the defects of manual processes. 2, improve the process, operate at low cost, reduce the turnaround time, ensure high throughput or high volume processing, and bring speed to the process. So it will improve profitability, capacity building, staff capacity, shift from plastic to manage better breakages, and of course, enhance patient safety and improve sample management. Goals of automation include: automation seeks to address these problems by targeting reduced costs of operation, improve quality, and low turnaround time. And of course, I need to stress that automation covers the pre-analytic, analytic, and post-analytic processes in the cytology laboratory. For example, let's look at some application of this. Automatic machine in cytology at the pre-analytic stage. Process of collecting the sample. Colposcope will be used to enhance vision, visualizing the vagina or the cervix. So automation makes it clearer. It enhances the process of optimizing sample collection. So colposcope provides automated environment to view the vagina and cervix for optimal sample collection. Makes it faster. Better yield of samples, and of course, better quality of samples. I'm going to use the algorithm of liquid-based cytology to explain automation. Yeah, liquid-based cytology, you are already familiar with this technique. We discussed it yesterday, the thin prep and chop part. It's an automated process, make the smear better. The thin prep will smear in a thin manner, while short part we concentrate it on the spots. So it's made possible by automation, and that has corrected the hitherto observed errors in sampling handling at that point. And when the slide is ready, there's an imaging system that will be used to magnify the image, scan the image, project it, for review. So the clinical cytologists will review, and anyone that is malignant, the cytopathologist will review it. So at the end of the day, you have quality results, and of course, and you have optimized sample management. The clinician or the requesting gynecologist will be satisfied with the results received, and confidently it can administer treatment to the patient. Everybody working hand in hand to see that the patient gets better. So at the analytic stage, there must be an automated process. So there's a processor that makes it happen. So the slide staining is no longer going to be done manually. Fixation, staining is automated already. The stainer is there to stain the slides. Some stainers are open system stainers, some are closed system. Open system, you can get the reagents from many sources, but the closed system is a narrow system of sourcing for the manufacturers that can provide the reagents. But one good thing is that the auto stainer will be able to process many samples simultaneously in a very easy manner, as shown on this slide. Then there is now possibility of virtual staining of cytology smears. All those things, artificial intelligence is bringing that to the table. A system that enhances slide imaging, scanning of the images, and reading of the pattern, which can be fed into machines, computers, to train them to identify those patterns. So many equipments come to play here: automated microscopes, scanners, whole slide imaging system, machine learning and neural networks that improve the intelligence of the technology or computer systems to be able to identify patterns of all those cases we have been reviewing since we started on hormonal cytology. At the end of the day, deep learning will make it possible to have a robust result that everybody will be proud of. But I'm going to talk a little bit about what you see in virtual staining. Autofluorescence images of unstained tissues, which are called label-free slide, from organs, have been tested, and they were used to train neural networks, which makes it possible for stains, whether H&E, special stains, a short stain for hormonal assessment, or name it to be fed into the system so that the machine can get used to them. And that makes it ready for reading of patterns. And deep learning makes it possible for tissue image to be captured in vivo by an image system. We send this to neural network. A neural network will map, we map all those images and put them in memory. No. After this is done, the process by artificial intelligence is to still call experts to come and compare or assess the results that the machine is dishing out. So this is what virtual staining is about. Everything is to optimize the process for better outcome. And of course, the intelligence and presence of the experts is still needed, despite the highly automated system possibilities that we are now having. So this image shows the flow chart for deep learning, for imaging system and enhancement of process of automation. You are going to see the image now. Okay, so this is the image, self-explanatory what you see, how it is a system that doesn't allow you to manually use chemicals to stain slides. You have to use the technology available, deep learning, to transform the raw tissue that have been fixed to the neural network. And of course, it can be transcribed into images, colored images that will be read and diagnosis will be made. So that's the end of the lecture of today. I'm going to give you assignments. I'm going to communicate with your class rep. We have 9 groups from your list. You are 63 numbers, so we have 9 groups. Each group has an assignment attached to it. So what all the groups will do is that you write a full essay on the cytology and hormonal assessment of conditions that have been given to each group. So each condition, group 1 will write essay on the cytological assessment of on metropathia hemorrhagica. Group 2, follicular cytosis. Group 3, techomas. Group 4, Chiari-Frommel syndrome. Group 5, genetic hirsutism. Group 6, we work on masculizing ovarian tumor. Group 7, we work on what's the Leventhal syndrome. Group 8, androgenic hyperplasia, and group 9, granulosa cell tumor. So members of the groups will be communicated by the class rep. So everybody have been grouped to get into 9 groups. So your class rep will communicate your group to you and the members of the group. So each group will work on the assignments. And please, after doing your term paper, the essay, write all the names of your group members on what you'll be submitting. Submit it digitally, all your work to the class rep. We have 2 weeks to work on those assignments, all the groups, submit it. So the class rep is going to merge everything with a single PDF document and send to me for assessment. So each group will be assessed, and I think this is a very easy way to handle our continuous assessment so easily, so so that people are not stressed. Thank you for coming. You can make your comments or ask me questions. Can you hear me? Question, comments? So if you don't understand anything on the assignment I've projected, please ask questions for clarity. We have 2 weeks to submit the assignment. So thank you. That's the end of today's lecture. Comments or questions? I think we understand everything that we have discussed today.
Well done, sir. Thank you for the beautiful presentation of the lecture. It is, in fact, it is quite interesting. It is as if you should not stop again, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
So please, the class rep, I'm going to chat you. I will send the lecture material before tomorrow so that people can have it. And yeah, the group you belong to will be communicated to you by your class rep. So we have 2 weeks to submit. So, and I wish you the best as you prepare for your exam. So we already have our template for the continuous assessment. You'll see attendance and this assignments. Then for the exams, we are going to communicate to you before your exam. We interact before your exam. So I wish you all best of luck.
Thank
Have
you
a
very
nice
much.
evening. All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Bye, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you.
Very well. Oh, for me, put one more.